This piece, I have a couple of issues with it. I'm sorry for the NSFW, so I'm just going to have to discuss with it, uncensored. But what we have here, the biggest issue, I can just censor it if that's necessary. I'm just going to go ahead and give her some stickers. Yay! Okay. So right here you have a bunch of green. When we use green, especially specifically on this area right here, we're basically saying she has a 5 o'clock shadow. Is that what it's called? A 5 o'clock shadow or a 9 o'clock shadow? I really don't know. But that's pretty much what's happening. So on a color layer on my brush, I'm going to just get the base tone of that skin tone, just the base tone, and brush it over any green patches. Typically the areas you use green on skin tone, so a lot of people say, you know, in order to draw more realistic skin, well, I say that, in order to draw more realistic skin, you have to bring in greens and purples and some really odd colors that just sit there on the face sometimes. And green is one of the colors that we use around translucent skin, so skin that is extra see-through because it's just, there's nothing behind it. There's no bone or major muscles behind it. So it's more green compared to the blood and muscles underneath the cheeks. So we would typically put green around the eyes because there is no major muscle group, excuse me, or like like a bone structure or blood vessels or some major translucency like the cartilage for the redness in the blood to shine through. There is no opportunity for subsurface scattering in that area, so all we see is a deficit of the blush, and then because red is missing as a result of the absence of red, we get green around the eyes. What you did before made it look like she had a beard that was shaved, that was growing out. And after. Okay, so that's one big thing I wanted to recommend. The breasts are different sizes. The skin tones that you have captured are just a little bit off. The anatomy is definitely off. The shoulders, the neck area, the neck is very muscular. So in your reference, you've probably over-exaggerated some minor muscle groups and made them too large in your rendition, which has made it feel like it's a man's head with a woman's hairstyle on a woman's body, especially because of that green 5 o'clock shadow. A 5 o'clock shadow is when a man shaves his beard in the morning, and around like midday or at the end of the day, his beard is growing out, so you see like a blue-green, like brownish haze around the area where his beard is about to grow back. And that's what that green looked like. Okay, so those are some quick tips on this. I'm just pretty much going to jump through all of these. They come from different topics, and I'm just going to try to cover all of them at the same time. I feel like it's been too long since I did a class that was long enough to cover everyone's work, so I want to do that today. Oh yeah, before I continue, I want to show you guys that there are a couple new rules on the community. Please remember that when you upload your stuff, if you have a 14-day challenge currently running, you cannot post your 14-day challenge into the miscellaneous work for community critique folder. You have to post it onto the 14-day challenge folder topic. Okay, so you cannot post your 14-day challenge over here. This wall is for people who want to critique or who want to critique on non-14-day challenge material. If you are currently undergoing a 14-day challenge and you would want a 14-day challenge critique, please make sure you get to know people in the 14-day challenge topic section. Give out critiques if you want critiques. That's what this community is. This community isn't made so that you can get a critique from me solely. That's not what this critique community is for. I can't go around and critique 4,600 members and their posts daily. This is a for the community, by the community kind of deal. When I can, I go in and give critiques when I see there's one that's missing critiques or someone really needs this specific little topic discussed or something like that. Other than that, I choose stuff right out of this miscellaneous work for community critique topic. I choose stuff out of here, and instead of typing it up, I add it to the videos. So just remember that 14-day challengers, do not post your stuff on here. I still have to go through the rest of these posts and get the rest of the 14-day challengers into the topic. And if you don't get critiques, if there's a problem and you're not getting critiques, feel free to request them. Feel free to provide critiques if for people. Don't feel like you have to be of a certain skill level to give out critiques. That's not true. Anyone can give critiques as long as your eyes are functional and you can see the world clear as day. You still have a reference library in your mind that is capable of finding mistakes in pictures. You don't have to be a pro to critique people who are at your skill level or higher. Okay. All right. So let's get started. What am I looking at here? I'm looking at a big lava monster in a foreground. There's a foreground, and then there's a character who could care less that he's trying to scare her. She's just like, yeah, well, I'm not scared. And then we have this character who's got a sword, and I really have to just stress my eyes in order to see all of this, to make sense of this. And the reason why it's hard to make sense of any of this is because there is absolutely no distinction between foreground, middle ground, and background. No, these are not optional. The foreground is always just a little bit darker and the background is always just a little bit lighter. This is how we separate the stages in a canvas. So what you need to do, I can't do the selection for you. What you need to do is completely just, this is way too much for me to lasso through. There isn't any distinction at all between these areas. What you need to do is just cast some shadow between the foreground and the background. And what I'm going to try to do is just get some of this stuff kind of edited out. So clearly he's a boss that no one's defeated, and these characters are going to defeat him. And this is as much as I can do from here. Then there's the fact that we have no depth at all, and then there's the fact that he's just a floating head in an open landscape. I'm sure there are other indicators you can use to make it feel like this guy, he's got arms, he's got legs, so some light cast in between his shoulders, so behind his shoulders I mean, and in between his arms and legs, or his arms and his torso, might help us differentiate between him and his background. So some slight staging stuff, just really, really quick stuff. And already we're getting a bit of a read. So I have to smudge this out. Just so that we can see where his arm went up to throw that whip. I think he has a whip, like a Balrog kind of deal. But just some basic stuff I think you need to work on. You have access to your layers, so I can't really go in and make a big impact with the before and after. I wish I could. The canvas is just a little bit more square than it should be. If this is a full landscape, then please go ahead and lengthen the width. I mean, widen the canvas. And this character and this character, they don't have to be on the same level. One can be a little bit more in the foreground, and one can be a little bit more in the background or the mid ground. So you can have one character over here, but she seems like the main character. She doesn't seem very afraid, and she's got her little cape, and she's not scared of him. He could be looking in one direction. You have to decide which direction the Balrog is looking in. Is he looking forward this way, or is he looking at this guy? You have to decide which side of him we're seeing. He can't just yell in the general vicinity. You have to tell a story, and the lines of sight connect the units in the canvas. So if he's sharing some vision with her, like if he's sharing a line of vision with her, or a line of sight with her, then we're looking at her, and then I guess something of hers, or an arrow, or the sword, or something can point back at this character who's in the mid-ground, who has to be a little bit smaller than she is. So now you've got step 1, step 2, and then the final piece in the background. And this is how you create a dynamic background, have different levels. But all you really had was level number 1, and then this guy. You just had the most basic MS Paint kind of landscape setup. And then you have another thing in the background, something that very, very, very like an early stage in the leveling. So always remember, you have the chance to raise and lower your characters across different surfaces and different levels, different sizes. You have scale. And if you don't know the units of depth, if you haven't watched the video where I cover the units of depth, if you haven't seen it yet, there are many videos titled depth, so you can go ahead and look for that in my videos. But typically it's being able to show that you have a third dimension with this, creating an artificial depth, and having that basic one character on the line of the horizon, and then one bad guy in the distance. It feels like it's been, it's a very, very adolescent drawing. And the rules of depth, basically this is the equivalent of having one triangle beside the other. And you guys know what these triangles are. But having different levels, having triangles of different scales, having some triangles behind some smaller ones, some above the horizon line, some below the horizon line. Now you really have a dynamic relationship between all of these forces. Some triangles could be way in the foreground, almost completely black and distorted. And then some could be atmospheric fade and completely invisible. Instead of having basic adolescent kind of drawing one triangle beside the other. This is zero depth. This whole image is expressing exactly zero depth. I mean, maybe it's like 2% depth because you've got these characters in the foreground and they're in front of the Balrog, but that's about it. So this is what happens when we try masterpieces. Like I said, masterpieces only serve one purpose. You did amazing with the color and the texture of the fire. That's wonderful. But it does serve the purpose of showing you what you don't know yet, what you really need to work on. That's what masterpieces are really good for. And now you have like a whole curriculum planned out for the next 2 weeks. Master some depth, do some form studies where you are showing the distance between one form and the other, and try to show one form study in the distance that's a little bit faded. Maybe one of them is just a little bit reflective. Now you have that opportunity to learn something new, because that's what this masterpiece, or quote-unquote masterpiece, has served. It has pointed you in a direction to study, and that's a really good thing that masterpiece can offer. Trying them just to master or just to discover what you haven't mastered yet. As for it being a full masterpiece to throw in your portfolio, I'm telling you right now, a year will pass and you'll want to go and change all the pieces in your portfolio or delete them all. You, just of your own accord. We never love the same work, like the work we do a year from now. We always find mistakes. So I wouldn't call it a masterpiece if you have to keep going back and correcting it. It's a study. So for this piece right here, same thing with the whole masterpieces stuff. It's serving the sole purpose of revealing to you what you don't yet know, what you need to go back and study. So let's look up a basic picture of a smile. Okay? Smile. And this is what comes up. Okay, but let's look up old lady. Images. So old lady smiling, a real old lady smiling. Okay, and the smile and your painting. Your painting is exactly in the middle of these two extremes. One of them is symbolic, universal, cartoony, flat, two-dimensional. One of them is a picture of a functional human being, a photograph of the most realistic, most full of volume structure. You're in the middle. This is not a healthy middle ground, because what you've done is, by using the wrinkles, addressing the surface texture, bringing in reflectivity on the eyeballs, you're telling me you want me to take this seriously. You're telling me you want me to see a realistic face, but the way you made this smile is completely outside of the way these muscles that you have shown me their texture and their layers, these muscles just don't work like this in a realistic platform like this. Alright, so the smile is completely symbolic. The nose is non-three-dimensional, very, very flat, side view, almost like an Egyptian side view of a nose. Have you ever seen those side views of an Egyptian drawing, or like the hieroglyphs? This complete side view of the nose. And it looks like a young woman cosplaying as an older woman. The reason why I always tell from far away it's someone cosplaying as an older person is because when we get older, the tilt in our eyes disappears completely. So when you're cosplaying as an older person, or in movies, right, someone ages and they get the actor and they make the actor age by giving them like just dressing them up in this I don't know, what do you call it when some special effects makeup or something like that? And they're giving wrinkles and bags and all this stuff. They still look like really, really young but like the most beautiful young person. I know which one to search up. Old Katy Perry. Images. This right here. Okay, old ladies don't look like this because old ladies have this downward curve, okay? This inner corner being lower than this corner is giving away completely that this is a young woman dressed up as an old woman. When you get old, your eyes just don't do that. They sag, they flip, they go upside down. They basically just, one is the highest one, which is the inner corner, and the other just goes ahead and sags down. But you also have that here. If you squint your eyes, you can see the bridge light just there, and we don't have that here. Of course, the light is coming from beneath her face, so it's like a firelight or some kind of light source lower than her face. So I guess that's why you wouldn't have some light up there. But some of the biggest changes I would go straight for is this. She looks like a very, very nice old lady. If you're going for that, spot on, you have it. But it looks like a young woman cosplaying as an old lady. And that's because you've mixed and overlapped the age signatures. And I've talked about this before. It's a fundamental. All the fundamentals are the same. Everyone has issues with these fundamentals, and we all benefit from having them listed to us. Okay? I am an agent of science, say to yourselves. Me, Istebrak, I am an agent of science as well. It's all about the sciences. The more of them we preserve in our work, the more believable our work will be. She actually looks like she's looking down, so that's great. You have that, a real gaze, a believable gaze. But other than that, the smile is extremely symbolic. If you think about it realistically, really the only thing that happens when an old person or anyone smiles, we don't really have this upward C curve that we have in like a smiley face. Wait, I think I closed it down. There we go. We don't have this. No one smiles like this. Have you tried to make your mouth do this? It's hilarious. It's probably the most fun thing to do if you're bored. Just try to smile like this. You will not succeed. Mouths don't do this. This is a symbol of how generally, imagine these as arrows instead of these two lines, generally our face moves upward when we smile, which is why we made it a C curve or symbolize it as a C curve. But scientifically, that's not happening. We have a more of a horizontal, dimpled smile thing happening with the muscles. Okay, so we have a little bit more of this. She still looks like she's smiling, but she doesn't look like a young woman cosplaying as an old lady. As for the squint of the smile, so when sometimes we smile and we squint, we can give her a squint. She's an old lady, she's always squinting. We have the sag of the eyebrows. So it's not that the bone structure changed or the eyeballs sagged. It's the skin that sagged, sagging the outline around the corners and making the outer corner sag down while the inner corner is just fixed in place. The inner corner didn't move. It's just the outer corner that that moves realistically, like in real life. Okay, so I'm just giving this little dimple upward. Again, I'm not sure exactly if you're trying to go for an evil smile. It looks like a very sweet old lady. But this is reading a little bit more to me like the texture you're using. And this is not a Disney old lady. This is, you were going for the full texture. So this would be the old lady version of what you drew. What you drew, you're going to have to take the age a step backward. So if you want to keep the girl you drew, you would have to get rid of some of these wrinkles and get rid of the super wrinkle on either side right here. So if she is young, and this does look a little bit more evil and menacing, that's why I'm saying, I'm worried about changing this, because if she had these sags, just like we see with this old lady, where is it? You see, these are real lines. These lines don't happen until you're like 70, 80, 90. You don't get these lines very, very quickly. Okay, so if she did have this like super uplit, like, facelift face, and she was smiling, she would have a thicker line here to represent. First of all, it would be a light instead of a shadow. So it would be a thicker line. And it really wouldn't be like this deep wrinkle. If it was, then we'd have to go with this version, because things sag when you get old, especially women. Right, if her eyes are still pointing up, the smile is still a little bit like elementary, very symbolic. So I would ease up on the smile just a little bit. But if she is a caricature, you can mess around. That's why you're kind of in a gray zone. You're getting away with a lot of stuff, but not really. And you see this little jowl thingy that sagged down. We don't get this unless you're this old. We don't get this. This thing, if she wasn't smiling, she would have this little sag right here. See that bump? And then the chin. Bump, chin. Bump, chin. So what we have to do is get rid of that. If we want to keep the younger but still old on the other side of 50 kind of witch, okay? If you want to keep that. But you also gave us the same texture of skin as her. So you're really confusing the signatures now at this point, and that's why it's hard for us to find a mid-ground. I like this one. This one is a nice old lady. She's just old, and she's okay with being old, and you're okay with her being old. You're not trying to force her to be beautiful. If this was a pin-up, you'd have drawn a 20-year-old woman with double D tits up to her chin. But this is not what we're drawing. You're deliberately drawing. The narrative calls for an old lady. So you're gonna, oops, fuck, I lost the edits. So you're gonna have to give us this, exactly what we're looking for, which is a perfectly old lady. Don't try to edit too much. Yeah, I lost the edit I just made because of the Control Z, but it's okay. I can do it again. You understand what I'm saying? Please look up a reference. If you're trying an old lady for the first time, you will use your visual library. What you last drew, you'll draw it again on your next drawing. Write that back to me. What that means is when we draw something and we spend 5 hours on it, and we drew this beautiful looking chick, and we finished the painting, we threw it out. If we're to end up for our next painting having to draw the opposite of that girl, we will accidentally bring back what we last drew on our current drawing. So if you drew a pretty girl last time, this is why your old lady doesn't look like an old lady. It looks like a pretty young girl. Or you tried to force some of the beauty signatures on her instead of sagging her eyes where they needed to be. So you end up making these mistakes. So just remember, shake off the last drawing you drew. Remember, be aware of the age signatures. Don't make the mistake of unifying them or accidentally combining them. It just will look uncanny. You don't get an old woman that has a facelift unless it looks something like this. Okay, so that's the realistic version of having like a woman who has like excessive, like even if they get the facelift, they still have the lower eye. It's still sagged down. There's still like the sag. Now it's giving me this stuff. Old woman, plastic surgery. Because that's the only way. You get something like this. See that? That's too much. That's too much surgery. It's just obscene. And it's out of the norm. And that's what the version, that's the realistic version of what you drew is. Right here. Why is it giving me this one? Oh, okay. Alright? God, why do people do this to themselves? Okay. So where is that other one I found the other day? I don't know. But that's pretty much what we're talking about. That's the realistic version of what you did. So try to look up a more realistic version of the smile. Look up a more realistic version of what happens to the eyes, what happens to skin. You don't get away with it as much as you think you do. All right. So this piece right here, one of the biggest problems with it is that you have two opposing but equally strong light sources, and then you have the primary light source that's outside of the camera. You have no man's land values, which you're getting away with a little bit because you really haven't thrown them into the brightest bright everywhere, just in the hot spots, so you get away with it. But each of these casts a shadow, and what we have to do, we don't really cast shadows, we create the illusion of a cast shadow. This light is coming from above, and that means that it's going to catch any form that's pointing up at it. So that includes the shirt and the breasts. No, there isn't that much of a bump. Okay, and it has to be blue. Just look at what I did. I captured the blue color. This light is orange, so I'm going to capture that yellow color, and it's countering everything this light is doing, and it's coming from the side. So what you have to do is you have to find a way to, okay, this light is coming from above and this light is beside her. So it means that this entire section right here is being illuminated by this. Of course not in this level of brightness, it's just a fraction of this. And I do erase, apply, and erase. Edge work is really, really important. But then this breast casts a shadow like that. So what you have right now is a really, really complicated interaction between two light sources that are of equal strength and two different colors. And that's going to make it very, very difficult for you to pull off a realistic light environment. It's going to look more busy and messy than what you're going for, which is probably realistic. The hair is pretty much reading as an afro. So if you weren't going for an afro, you have an afro now. It's like being told, hey, you didn't want a baby, but now you have a baby. You have an afro. You're going to have to deal with it. You have an afro in your painting if you didn't want one. And you want to be able to, again, make the read happen intentionally, not accidentally. So if her hair was supposed to be going all crazy and everywhere, again, it's just a simple Google hair fan. God, please don't give me, like, scary accidents. Hair blowing. Okay, so there's this example, there's this example. You don't have to make the hair go crazy. It's just hair tends to stick together if it's not an afro, if it's like just free-falling hair. It tends to stick together in clumps. So you have to just find these pieces and clump them together and make them reflect the amount of whatever is happening, whatever is causing this wind. Right, so if it's the blasts, then you have one blast causing the hair to go in this direction, another blast causing the hair to go in this direction. So you have a nice opportunity for a variation of shape. Right now, all you have is literally 3 circles. And then the rest of the painting. And they're in a very awkward position, and they're creating a very awkward curve. What you have to do is kind of just split this canvas in half and give the hair some interesting silhouette to it. It's just simple. You just have to interrupt it. Give it some madness. Give it some randomness. When hair just goes everywhere, don't draw it symbolically. Don't just, when someone draws blowing hair or they imagine hair going everywhere, they end up just imagining an afro, like imagining like a what's it called, like a halo of hair. Really what's happening is that the hair is a non-dense object, and it's just following the air currents. So you just have to think about, okay, what's the most powerful air current? That's what's going to distort the shape of the hair the most, or move it around the most. So I did what I could to respond to these light sources, but really it's a very, very confusing little light source situation you have here. The colors are beautiful. You've harmonized the colors. I love that. I love how you don't have this crazy saturation where it doesn't belong. But just some of these areas are throwing off the canvas just a little bit. We just have some more flyaway hairs. Okay. This thigh can have a little bit of both because it's cylindrical, and a cylinder has multiple sides because it has only one side. So it looks in every direction. So what we end up having is one light here responding to the main light source, and then the blue light as the diffuse. And then you have a nice terminator in between them. Another chance to bring in both light sources into this light environment. You cannot have a light environment without addressing all light sources. Write that back to me. A light environment means that you have addressed every single possible combination of all the light sources, starting with the primary, going all the way down to the secondary or tertiary. Nick says we can't do a class without Googling something terrifying. Honestly, you guys wouldn't learn if I didn't scare the shit out of you. That's the thing. The fear factor is what makes you remember never to mix age signatures ever again, because the realistic version of those age signatures is absolutely terrifying. People do all kinds of shit to their faces, and there's an example of everything on Google. Everything, absolutely everything. Google is a wonderful thing. Okay, so I'm just doing some of that. And then we've got the face, which seems to defy all law because it's not following any of these light sources. It's so faithful to the primary universal light source in the painting. It's so faithful and loving. It's completely ignored these powerful balls of light that are so strong they're behaving like primaries. Okay, so this light, this yellow light is everywhere, as well as the blue light. And each of these lights is casting a shadow. No, the shadow is not the opposite color of the light casting it. It's just the absence of that color. Not the opposite. So don't go bringing in like a, like an orange shadow or something like that. Can't tell if her mouth is open or closed. Just bringing in that yellow everywhere. On the nose, under the nose, in this area here, under the brow. All of these areas in exactly the same way, but just a little bit higher. It's just beside. We've got the blue light. So I'll show you in a second if I can pull it off. I'm going to show you on Portrait Studio this exact lighting setup. If I can pull it off. We can actually give the lights their color. So I'm going to set it up for you. Come on, Portrait Studio. Yes. Kind of losing my voice. I'm very sorry. Okay, so one of them is above and at the same level. It's kind of like a really, really tricky light source you did here for yourself. But you have to address, that's what it means to have a light source environment. You address every combination of all the light sources in the image, starting with the primary. And if the light source is so strong that it's, it's right beside the face and it's a big Dragon Ball Z Kamehameha fireball, it's going to be stronger than the primary. It's going to change the behavior of the primary light source. Okay, so let's do this exactly. Let's give this light source an intensity. Let's show its position. Okay, so its glow is right beside. It's just where I thought it would be, and it's yellow. Let's just give it a yellow strength. And then we've got a second one that's blue. Okay. And its position is above the face. Where did it go? Come on, baby, where'd you go? Abu, what the fuck? Oh my god. Okay. So this little guy just completely disappeared. I don't know where the fuck he went. I don't give a shit. I'm just gonna find this other one. Okay. Where is your position? And I'm gonna give you this strength, and just from above. Still getting used to this new format of Portrait Studio. You get 3 point lights. So see what happens. These lights, when a light has a color, it on top of the universal. So this is the universal light source is on. This is if it wasn't on. This is if the universal light source was off and you just had these two lights. So the daytime was still there. It changes the color somewhat as a filter, almost like a color layer or like a monochromatic color layer. It changes the color completely. Okay, these are both of equal strength, so somewhat equal strength, just like that. Let's make sure this one is like right beside the head. Like super strength like that. And this one as well. Like a super strength. See what's happening? Let me lower them down actually. So we have some shadow still from the primary. Okay, so you see we still have these cast shadows from the primary light source. We still have everything intact. These are secondary, but they're behaving as like complete diffusions of the primary light source. Look at what's happening to the primary light sources. So this is if we turn them off, and this is if we turn them on. You have to address that they will affect the face. This is a very, very lightly, like let me just duplicate the layer, see if it does anything. It's okay if it changes the color of the face. It's better for us to respond to these humongous color changing point lights than ignore them and just keep it like that. That's flat. Why place two light sources in your painting if you've never tried it in a study? Why try it in a situation like this? The only explanation I could have for that is if you've been hired to do it and you're forced to try something you've never tried before. Okay. Maybe I should have used the camera light on Portrait Studio. You also get a light on the camera. So there's a lot of different light sources you can use. Hopefully your computers can handle it. Okay, I moved them too much. I know, I pressed really hard. That's why the first light, or second light disappeared. I've been super impatient. I just want to jump straight back into this. Okay, so I would definitely do this. This looks so dynamic. It's a complete response to the light source. And we have this beautiful terminator line right in between where all this happens. This is actually not that lit up. It's below, so this forehead area doesn't get illuminated. We've got some pretty sharp versions of this shadow. A really sharp edge along here. And then the forehead is actually what gets that blue stuff. The forehead gets some of the blue light. But we still have the core shadows from the primary from primary light source. All right. And then this is the before and after. Before, after. Okay? Before, after. So we got rid of that extra little bit of, let me just use a darken layer on that. That little afro shape, that really, really empty kind of shape, wasn't really working. We gave the hair a better silhouette, which serves the painting. And then we responded to both light sources. This one actually needs to be a little bit more blue, so I would just get a color layer, grab that blue, and then just throw it on top. And this is how you get a light environment, by responding to every single light source around. The environment is full of like 3 or 4 major lights. This leg in the distance wouldn't be that black. So all we do to that leg is we just make it disappear. We don't give it this humongous amount of contrast, because that's just not what happens to this object. Or in our painting, that's not what we allow to happen to our object. It's asking for too much attention. It's contesting the focus, and we end up throwing off the light environment and the canvas. So we just throw this off into the distance with a fade, and that's it. The canvas I feel is too long, So a little bit of a, just like that would have done the job. And you might want to consider shrinking one of these, making one of these the primary and one of these just the diffuse. This would really, really help you. This skirt would get some blue light, and then again we'd have the Terminator, and then we get the yellow. Okay. So before, after. Alright, so I'll flatten that. Okay, I'm taking questions now. You guys can just, you can go ahead and ask your questions if you'd like. Istebrak, I'm pretty sure they said they were requested to do the painting. Oh yeah. That's the only time you would try something like that. To try a completely new light source environment setting. You have 3 or more light sources, and you know, you end up trying something you haven't even taken into a study environment, which is very dangerous. You end up making these kinds of mistakes. Why is the face so light? Where does the light come from that the face is, the lights from that lights the face from the front? Why is the face so light? Because there's a universal light source. There's the sun in the image as well that we don't see, that's off screen, that I mentioned early on. The super chat is a bad idea. Who's used super chat? Has anybody used it? What's happened? Has someone used it already? YouTube allowed me to have super chat on the live stream, and I just turned it on. I don't think anybody has used super chat yet, so. How do you access the menu in Portrait Studio? I cannot activate by clicking model moves with right click. Menu? You mean this? Right here. Do you have a video talking about how to use tools and opacity in Photoshop, like brushes, etc., getting them to behave like traditional tools? I talk about it, not one sole video dedicated to that. I talk about it throughout all my videos. So secondary colored light sources just changes the colors of the primary light source. It does cast shadows. No. It does cast shadows, and it diffuses the shadows of the primary light source. It's a light. It's just, you know, and all the things that light does, casting shadows and changing colors and illuminating stuff across surface areas that are like facing them, across parallel surface areas. However, it's a smaller than the larger primary light source, so it's not as strong, not diffusing so much that it's taking control of the light environment. Did you discontinue your figure drawing book? Because I can't find it anywhere. Yes, I have taken down all of my books. I've told you guys before in previous streams that I will be starting work on a complete new revised book. So far I've just taken them down. I feel like I've learned a lot and experienced a lot more in private practice, and I have more thorough, I guess, examples and more thorough tutorial method, I guess, or tutorial discourse that I want to use to write a whole new book and represent my channel with more updated work. Yeah, it worked. Abu used $2. Yeah, the super chat works. It works like this. I just see your little comment up here. It's like I'm not sure what percentage YouTube takes from this. Okay, we see $2. Thank you, Abu, $2, yay. I got Portrait Studio today, but it's not working when it launches. What should I do? On the website, istebrak.com, you can look for, if you scroll down on the store, you can send in a form submission describing your issue, and we'll troubleshoot it for you. If it doesn't work, we send you a whole new version to install. You recently bought those books. Okay, keep them to yourself. Don't share them. I'm having some technical issues with Portrait Studio. Okay, well, just like I said, scroll down at the bottom of the page and submit, and almost always these issues are a result of your firewall, or you didn't install it properly, or you're just not familiar with the tools. Istebrak, what do you think about T-poses when designing characters? You can include a lot of gesture in a T-pose, but generally speaking, it's just for design purposes. It's not for presentation, like staging or final turnaround of the character, or a showcase or a spotlight of the character. It's just specifically just to decide how to dress them. The way you would dress a Barbie doll or an action figure or something, by just raising its arms so that you can see all aspects of the design. And T-poses turnaround layouts for character design is typically the most popular one to pitch characters with. It's a weird question, but I really need help figuring this out. How do you make it look like someone's picking up something out of a bag rather than putting it down? Yeah, really out of the blue question. I guess there's no way. You just use the same gesture to put something in a bag as you do take it out. All you have at your disposal is the panel that came before it or the panel that came after, if it's in a comic book, just so that we can see the sequence of motion. Either it's sourced from the bag or outside of the bag. Am I planning to make more brushes? I'm using both packs at the moment and they are amazing. Never seen any better ones. That's really sweet. Thank you. I put a lot of thought and time into designing those, which means that my next set would have to have a lot of thought put into it. I have been working on sketching brushes and I've been working on blending brushes, which is the most important thing for me right now, is getting out a good pack for you guys that you can use with Smudge Tool. I talked about it last class. Using Smudge Tool is absolutely the best option, or try to use it more so percentage-wise than using the eyedropper tool to blend. And I have, put my words where my mouth is, I guess, and and John, I swear to God, I'll kick your ass. And I have started designing some scatter brushes for you guys to use alongside Smudge Tool, which will change the way you blend permanently. So I have been working on that. I have had a set that I've been giving out to my private students, but I'll be working off that set and perfecting it before I release it to the public. And John, John, okay, Poof Kaboom, the almighty. The program I'm using right now is Photoshop CS5, okay? Once and for all, you paid money to ask that question, so now I have to answer it. Do you think it's beneficial to learn some basic facial anatomy for drawing expression and aged faces, like learning where the fatty pads are and the major muscle? Of course I do. In my private practice, after doing a 14-day challenge, I assign my students expressions. And that's the next best way to challenge yourself. Doing through quarter view starts you off from scratch. Everything you think you knew goes out the window once you do through quarter view for the first time. The same thing goes with expressions. We discover a lot about what happens to the face in an animation. So anything that tests your rotation or your ability to animate or see something move where you've been studying it only as a still image for so long, suddenly it moves. That's when you really, really test yourself. So a rotation of a three-quarter view and a mouth smiling is definitely the next best mountain to climb after you've defeated the 14-day challenge front view grayscale deal. All right. I love your brushes. They saved my Photoshop learning experience. That's so sweet. How do you go from blended shading to cell shaded? You just leave out one shade of the three shades, so base tone, shadow, and highlight. You leave out one of those two. Mostly highlight is what we leave out. And then you just go from there. Where you place the cell shade, in fact, cell shading can be very, very hard, Evan, because where you place the cell shade of the shadow is where the geometry is. So if you think about the way Studio Ghibli cell shades, they've always chosen shadows along the side of the cube. So studying actual realistic, all the shades included images, and you take back all the shades, you have to do the realistic study. You have to do some realism. You have to do some figure drawing, some form studies, and then you take a step back and summarize one large section with only one shade. It means you have a full awareness of the native geometry of that object. So enough questions. I'm going to ask you guys to ask questions again at the end of the session, but I'm just going to go on to these right here. Okay, so it seems like this little baby is glowing, which is a really, really good idea. This is a really good idea. If this baby wasn't glowing, make it glow. Because right now you're in a hood. This hood, maybe caused by the dragon's wing or something, has cast a very, very strong shadow. So let's do this in layers, all right? Let's talk about this in layers. Because whenever we do how-to lighting anything, whenever it has anything to do with lighting, it's very difficult for me to explain it because it's like the most complicated of all the fundamentals is lighting. It's hard for me to explain something that is essentially multi-dimensional. It's hard for me to explain it with just a 2D thing. So let's do this in layers so we can think about it. Primary light source is the universe outside, okay? It's casting a shadow down in this tiny little cave where this girl is nursing this baby back to life and mama's helping her. Okay, so first and most important thing, the light environment is blue, meaning the eyeball, this glowy blue eye, this glowy orange eye has to be filtered through a blue. So it ends up looking more yellow than blue. The only way it could stay red is if it was glowing red. If it was a basic, eye that was just red tinted, please don't make it pure red. The blue light environment is going to just make it more purpley or take out the orange in there and leaving behind only a real like purple version of that red. So I took down the saturation and I'm shifting this over into a purple. Damn it. All right, wrong layer. So purple, and then it's still going to read as red. It's just not an orange red. An orange isn't possible in this environment. That's the rule. The wash, the color of the light source, everything is in charge. The light is in charge of all of that. And then just tilting that down. Okay, so then we got that to match. And I'm still going to cast some more shadows. And now when I erase, I'm going to erase along the geometry. Meaning I erase along the edges of everything. So there's edge number 1, edge number 2. So this is where you had all that lighting before. Too much lighting. And then this little guy, he starts to glow. So we need a secondary light source diffusion. We can't have a bunch of emptiness everywhere. We have to make something glow. Something diffuse the majority of the shadow caused by the primary light source. So I'm just giving this a little bit of a glow. And a glow comes twofold. It's in the brightness of the object, and it's in the glow actually emerging from it. It's hard to do this without messing up. Let's do this in a new layer. Color burn, whoops. Color dodge. And then normal, actually soft light. Where are you? And then just giving this a nice little glow backward. My eyes are on the navigator always. This new light, when it shines back on her, it's going to shine back on her as a blue. Okay, so I'm getting this exact color, and I'm placing it on the lower parts of every part of her face that looks downward at the light. So the lower part of her chin, the lower part of her eyebrow. So it's the inversion of the normal, like the average light source that we use in our paintings. The lower part of the breast area, all of that is what gets diffused. Okay? So we respond to the light source number 1, and then we move on to light source number 2, following all its rules. So now all I'm going to do is bring in some detail by using my edge brush. And this edge brush that I'm using is in the brush pack as well. So it's just a basic, well, it's not basic, but it's a square shaped brush that has a nice sharp edge to it, which you need. This is the lower part of the lip, and this is the upper lip. I usually just drop tool the color itself, eyedropper tool the light source color itself, and work with a really low opacity. My opacity right now is controlled by my pen pressure. Some more edge work here along the lower eyelid. Some edge work over here. Okay. John, you could have used those $2 to get on the bus. You just wasted $2 to get to the bus. Are you okay with wasting money like that, Johnny boy? That's a bus fare, man. Get you to that ramen shop. Okay, so everything that I'm doing here, I'm going to actually duplicate this layer and then erase away at it, leaving the hot spots only where the light source is really exposing certain areas. So just under, just under her neck. Just bought and tried your brushes for the first time. Phew, these are magical. Oh, thank you, Levi. I'm happy you like them. A lot of thought went into them, and they're kind of like a piece of my soul, those brushes. Okay. So I'm just edge work, basic edge work, wherever the highest point of the breast is, the peak of the mountain, and then everything that descends out of that is the diffuse. So that's all we're doing. That's what we're doing. This light source situation you had on her body was completely alien to the rest of the image. But by casting her in shadow and making her respond to the primary light source, suddenly we have a more believable light source environment, where we have response to the primary and then slowly, one by one, responding to the next secondary light source. And primary just means the biggest light source. Almost always it's the universe. And then after that, it's just the whatever is diffusing that. A firelight, a torch, a candle, a glowing little baby dragon. I feel like this whole thing here could be thrown into some shadow, like this part of her neck. The reason why is because this part right here seems to be in the way. I'm not sure if like the cast shadow of the dragon's wing, and then we have just a little bit of light coming through. Yeah, this would all be cast shadow. Part of the mama dragon's arm, this whole section, this whole section here would be cast in some light. Just gonna get my brushes for that. And then just lessen that, because we're trying to respond to the primary light source. The light on the dragon is just a little bit too strong, especially because they're so far away from the cast shadow, from the light cast on them. So again, I would just do the same thing, new layer, darken the head completely, and then just illuminate it wherever I feel like we really do have areas where the light source is directly exposed. Not exposing the entire frontal, like surface area of the dragon. Not completely throwing it into light. Okay, so that's what I would do. I'm not sure what this line is. This is working like an arrow, which is good. The anatomy itself of the dragon, you could have gone with something just a little bit more. Kind of like you can use your gesture lines to really express the dragon's wing. You could have given us some relief here behind her where you see her silhouette against the light of the background, seeing where the other dragon wing is. Maybe the mama dragon's wing is broken or ruined or hurt somehow or injured, and she's just helping nurse it back to life because the dragon can't fly. And then you have a story, again, which is why narrative is so important. It helps us complete the image. The dragon's anatomy is a little bit, looks like what Power Rangers turn into. It looks a little bit mechanical than organic, and it's mostly because you have these cells separated from each other, and it doesn't really feel snake-like or lizard-like, like it's under one simple layer of outer skin. But this whole little thing, this dragon, just needs a little bit more glow to it, just so we can show this dragon is got a powerful light glow coming out of it. And then a normal layer. But we really do need a powerful shadow from this entire section. We need a really, really strong shadow. Merge down, flatten. And then again with those hot spots, we find all these areas where we have a direct exposure she still looks cute. So some of you think that if you distort the light source and make it come from like a lower position, you ruin your portrait. You really don't. You benefit your portrait a great deal when you do that, because it feels more realistic. She doesn't look like she has blue lipstick on. She would if it was a natural light, but this light source is coming out of the dragon. If the dragon was glowy, see, that's the thing. If you weren't going for a glowy dragon, you need it because you need something to salvage all this excess shadow you have everywhere. I love the gesture of the dragon, of the baby dragon. It really feels like it's draped over her legs. Okay, so yes. And then we have this piece. Okay, so what you did here was the light was this way, and then you still cast the shadow. When you have a light, it just simply does this. Okay? Very, very simply, it does this. Nothing reaches this, the light just does not reach this, and it's a little bit more distorted, a little bit more long. Just like that. So it's simple. It's simple. Whatever is not light is background color. That's it. You need to smudge the light, this cast shadow, this cast direction of the light source. Smudge it the further the light source gets. It doesn't just leave a line like that. You don't see the line. You see all the stuff, only it's really when you, at the source of the light source, you see the kind of like fuzziness of it, but you don't see this line just travel everywhere. You see it on the objects. So this line we don't see because the light doesn't reach it, but the light does face this. So that's how we get the indication the light is pointing in this direction. This side of the textbook gets the light, and then that's the shadow. We don't make the light actually travel. Oh, the only way we see a light travel like that is if there is like a lot of particles or dust in the air, revealing the position of the light source. This front part of the keyboard. Okay. What else? This whole upper area, sort of the tablet. And this side area of the tablet. For her, you need some real shadows cast on her face, like some full-on shadows. Okay, so we need some longer shadows, really, really indicating that the light source is very, very strong. Some of it also on the chair. Chair is directly facing. So what we're doing is we're revealing the presence of the light source by casting the trail of the light source without the use of actually just cheating by having this ray of light. We're showing which areas this ray of light really is exposing in this dark room. And everything that the light touches is colored at the color of the light, and everything the light doesn't touch is the dark color. So the equivalent of that, like the way I can make that like on color modes is by getting darken, choosing this value, probably choosing like a purpley shade for it, something to counter the green in the yeah, like a little purple pinkish kind of thing. Getting darken and getting a little darker, just like that. This is a really, really cool way to cool down. Let me make it even darker. Not darken, is it darken? How do I make it so that the light doesn't get affected? Oh, okay. Yeah. No, this is wrong. So I'm trying to make this purple. Is it light? Yeah, it's lighten. It's lighten layer. Okay. Yes, there we go. Okay, so what I'm doing is using a lighten layer, which won't go lighter than anything the light is touching already. I'm making all the shadows cooler and have their own color, but I'm going to go back and erase everything that isn't in shadow. I'm going to make it back to that blue color. Typically, the lighten layer should not have changed this, but I just don't have time to figure out the formula for this. Okay, so what we're doing is we're giving light to everything that the light touches, and this purple color to everything that the light doesn't touch. And the reason why we're doing that is stylistic. Specifically for the stylistic purposes. So this, the thing is, that's why the green is such an awkward color, because it's not bright enough. You need to go for a way, way brighter color. And I lower that down. So see what happened here to the chair? That's pretty much what I'm trying to show you, is that we have this color used for all the shadows and this color used for all the lights, because right now the color you've used is monochromatic. And it's not helping push this feeling that all of the stuff in your studio is being illuminated by this light. So you've separated it, made two worlds. One of them is the world of anything that the monitor touches, and that's your studio, getting bright at the source, and everything else is a stylistic separation between light and dark. And then you have a nice way of including form without having a boring monochromatic background color. So now everything that the light does touch gets illuminated in this way. This can't be that bright. This flat little thing could have been moved over here. You could have had the Photoshop and the cube right over here, because it's kind of in the way. But that's all that I have to recommend for this one. It's a nice little idea. That's why I really wanted to look at it. You have a nice idea going. Okay, so any questions at all about light and stuff that we talked about? Okay, so this piece, it's just a little bit yellow. So what I'm going to do is shift it over into the reds, just before, after, just a little bit green. The reason why I did this is because I will bring that green back, that yellow, not really the green, and I'm going to make it into a more of a white yellow. And this is the light source. Again, a light changes the color of the object that it casts, the object that it casts upon. The light source's color is inherited by the object that receives the light. And I'm also using this as an opportunity to bring in some reflectivity on the face. Okay, so this is how you make skin look realistic. Just grab the light source's color. Skin is reflective, dewy, wet. It's going to reflect the nature of the light source to a level with specularity. Using this opportunity to bring in some more geometric signatures on the nose. Not so much value sharing, just as a chance to show off some form. I will lighten it again. And then blending, but not completely blending away. Okay, so this is the light source's presence on your painting. This is a very vital shade to have. You don't just skip this shade. So before, a little bit yellow, your light source's color wasn't present. The light source environment means the color of the primary light source. The reason why we're seeing this face is visible. And then we brought back some redness so it actually feels alive. So I guess the theme of today is light environment, responding to the primary light source, both in its light source intensity, its direction, and its color. Responding one by one. Can bounce light ever be used to introduce rim light and emphasize silhouettes that are otherwise obscured by shadows? Rim light is just bounced secondary light source, just seen from a different angle. So it's not a different kind of light. So absolutely, you can use, the reason why we use secondary light sources, ISM, is to diffuse primary light source shadows. We want to show what that shadow has hidden. We like the shadow, but it's just too much shadow. So we want to just bring in a second one just to diffuse it and show some of the lost form. So the reason why we do that Let me open up Portrait Studio just to make it a better impact for the lesson. The reason why we do that is because we want to show the form that's hidden. So the cast shadow sometimes caused by a really super strong light source or just too strong. The rim light is just secondary light source seen from an angle that is just perfect, so it reads as a rim. Sometimes it's caused by subsurface scattering. So let's cast some really, really strong shadows from a direction and bring in a point light. Give it some strength. Come on, buddy. I believe in you. And then just a little too strong. And give it a color. Let's make it blue because I love blue. Alright, so that's why we use it. And if it's in far enough, it reads as a rim light. Do you see that strength on it? That's a rim light. But it's just because of our angle. If we shifted our angle, then this is a secondary light source diffuse. The only reason why we call it a rim light is because it gets this strong. Let's turn down the background value. All the way down. Let's turn off ambience and say that we really, really wanted to see this distant shadow from the side. Completely turned off ambience. All we have is just this really, really strong light source. Let's turn down the strength. And we really wanted to show some of this hidden bit. We just gotta turn it on. It's a little bit distorted, so sorry about this. Again, this is some of the stuff Unity has limited us. It doesn't really allow us to use high poly. We are using a gaming engine to execute this lighting studio, but it's serving the purpose. Okay, so this is what light source, secondary light source is useful for. And this is a rim light, only because we're seeing it at the rim and seeing it in this level of strength. Okay, so it can be used anywhere. Typically where we use it, where we place a secondary light source, is on the dark side of anything. So let's get a really, really basic shape and apply this exact setup. Take it easy, homie. What the hell? Why are you so fast? Okay. So this is a rim light, and it's only a rim light because we're seeing it from a different angle. This is just what it looks like from the bottom. And this is what it looks like from the angle. And we tilt the angle just so we see it in this position. But this is how it would look if it was just on the side, on the dark side, and we have this little moon glowing back. And this is typically what happens with the sun. We're on the dark side of the sunlight. Okay, so this is the nighttime of the Earth, and this is the daytime of the Earth, and the moon gets some bounce light from the sun, bouncing it back at us. If it's a full moon, bouncing it light back at us on the dark side. And this is just how it looks on the dark half of the Earth. We still have a little bit of light. Okay, so nice little science lesson. Libby asks, is there a particular reason you made the shadows warmer in that last piece? I'm so sorry to bother you. Libby, stop apologizing. No, it was stylistic. Remember I said the reason why I'm bringing in that purpley red is just so we have a style, because it was monochromatic and that's a little bit boring. So I just brought in some reds for the shadows, which looks really, really cool. It's not that I'm cooling it down according to a fundamental formula. I just brought in an extra little color that's different from the primary monochromatic, just so we have a cool little style going on. Title of the video is Istebrak Lights Up Your Life. Off topic, but anatomy study tips. Space Cowboy asks, anatomy study tips. Don't study muscle groups on medically. Don't memorize muscle groups. Those are pointless. Don't waste time like that. Memorize, don't study muscle groups, meaning study them piece by piece or doing sections. Memorize entire muscle groups and how they move. So when you have a gesture line and you're drawing an arm and the arm is flailing around, draw one frame of that. And again, I always recommend studying figures, study a video of the moving arm, not just a still image, so you can appreciate the greater animation involved in that muscle motion. And then memorize the way the the muscles work together. So memorize them as a whole. So don't just memorize bicep by bicep and draw bicep by bicep and do little bicep by bicep studies. Draw the entire bicep area, the entire tricep area, how they tangle together. And the forearm and the joints in the forearm and the areas of motion from the wrist to the elbow to the shoulder. Those are just some study tips for anatomy. If you see it in motion, you remember it better. At least that's how I memorize muscle groups. Are the nostrils a bit small? Yes, they are. They're a bit small. How do you know when to start going from grayscale to color? And is it okay to experiment with different colors when normally a yellow would be used? You mean for the light source? The reason why we rush light source and realism in the light source is because we want to basically build our portfolio. It's just for efficiency's sake. But if you want to go straight in for those monochromatic light sources, blue kind of deals, the same rules apply. You have to make sure in your grayscale, when you're grayscaling, you are learning not to make muddy values. The reason why we grayscale is so we can learn form for form's sake, not have color in the way, and perfect our formula with color by removing the color of the formula, of the color, so the hue of the color formula, and leaving behind only the values, and then bringing the color back and realizing yellows only exist in high values. Blues can exist in the darkest tones. Red, darkened, is a poop color. Yellow, there is no dark version of yellow. There's no dark value of yellow, so when you want to shade yellow, you end up using orange. That's the stuff you end up learning when you work with grayscale for so long. Oh my god, it's raining. I love that. Do you have a video about the fundamentals of light? And if not, can you recommend me some sources to learn? I do have a video about the fundamentals of light. That's one thing that I made sure I did. I'm a pretty lazy human being. But other than that, when it comes to lighting, I take no shortcuts. Lighting is very important to me. And I'm pretty sure I have there, how to paint with a light source. Basically explaining the full, thorough method, I just squealed, the method behind, how we think about lighting, the map in your head, the greater map of lighting in your mind, how to imagine it animating on the form. And then I show you basically how my basic form study process and why I choose certain values. So this is why we do form studies, so we can practice light for light's sake, for form's sake. You're very welcome. Thank you for the kisses, Lady Lofty. I think, is it for me? I don't think it's for me. I'm going to take them anyway. Is Figure Drawing for All It's Worth a good book for people new to anatomy? Yes, it is. Absolutely. Tips, techniques for facial symmetry. I struggle with it lots. Flip your canvas. How is the best way to color a black and white value drawing in Photoshop? Not use black and white. Use grayscales. And master your edge work. Make sure you give your edges a chance before you depend on some contrast. Istebrak is subscribed to Bob Ross. Yes. You can search on channels. Of course you can, Nick. Silly. Are you kidding? The earth is flat, obviously. How do you know when to start going from grayscale? Is there a particular reason even the shadow's warmer? Doesn't use any pressure sensitivity options. The heck? Istebrak doesn't use any pressure sensitivity options. I actually do. It's on my pen pressure. I use transfer. Transfer gives you pen pressure when you have this is my scatter brush, by the way. This is what I mean by scatter. You smudge with this kind of brush. But yeah, if I turn transfer off, then I have no pen pressure control or opacity control with the pen pressure. Istebrak, earlier you said that shadow is the absence of light color, not its opposite. However, in the last piece you said use purple and green for shadow and light respectively. When is this okay? Use purple and green for shadow and light respectively. Purple and green. Wait, I said put green in the shadows? purple and green. Well, green would be the absence of red, which is the absence of the saturation for the red in the skin. So that's desaturating. That's the first point that we make when we use the sponge tool on desaturate. We desaturate here. See how green it looks compared to all that red? And then purple is when we cool it down and change whatever's left of that red to a more purple version. So we end up using this color for the shadows. If it's really dark, this is an exaggeration. What I said earlier, you said that shadow is the absence of the light color. So that yellow is missing, and that's the result of the purple. The reason why purple takes over is purple is part of blue, and blue is the last color to look good this dark. Literally, only blue looks this good and dark. Look, poop, poop, diarrhea poop. Green looks good only because it has some blue in it, and then just some more poop up here. Anything that has blue, from purple to turquoise, still look good in the darkness. This green is still a very ugly green, and this purple is still a very ugly purple, but blue, look at that baby. It's just so gorgeous, a beautiful color in the shadows. Such a rich navy color, even being so dark. So that's why it stays as the last color that exists. It's why it's the color, partially why the color of shadows is purple on snow. Because it's again one of the last colors that still looks good that dark, and the light environment, and the reflection of a white object's shadow on the light environment reflects just the color, the basic foundation color of the wash. Istebrak, you smell nice. Thank you. I smell like powder. How do you keep skin tones accurate under drastic light sources or environments? Using a reference is best when you're dealing with specific situations. Thank you, Lady Lofty. Do you think it's worth trying to fully finish paintings as a beginner? Let me put this into perspective, and this will be the last thing that I say. I don't try to finish paintings because I feel like, hey, Istebrak, if you finish this painting, you really will just ignore some of the biggest lessons you were supposed to learn with this painting, which is it's a single frame in your development, and you really need to study some faces better, and you really want to get into faces. These are studies, these single frames of my work. These are, lots of mistakes are available here. I could have turned any one of these into a masterpiece. In fact, these all started off as studies. These pieces of shit in my art, I'm really not proud of these. And these all started off as some sort of study that I forced into just a full painted image. I was working freelance at the time, so I had to, that had to situation. I had to toss some shit into my portfolio so I can get hired and pay my bills and pay my tuition fees. But typically, this one I did in the villain challenge last year. This is like the latest masterpiece I've ever tried, and there's so many mistakes up and down. This is just a catastrophe. This is just absolutely elementary and garbage. I don't want you guys to hear me talking shit about it. It's very aggressive. But all of these started off as studies. These are sketches. These are still like figure drawing sketches. They're not really, they are still studies. I didn't try to force them into a masterpiece. But if I did, it had a good foundation. But I'm mostly talking about these. These started off as a study. This didn't start off as a study fully. It was a sketch, and then I was trying to force the full painting of the villain. But this definitely, you can tell, it should have stayed a study. It should have just shut the fuck up and stayed a study. But then I just wanted to make some shit happen, and that was it. I, your teacher, have taken the responsibility of realizing, unless I have to, I'm gonna make a study count. And doing it into a masterpiece just delays the next time, how frequently, how quickly the next study will come in. So please, just remember, don't try masterpieces unless you have to, or you want to learn what you have left, or you really have a great idea you want to execute. But just remember that masterpiece is going to reveal, until you're a professional, that masterpiece is going to reveal all your mistakes. So if you're students, if you're all gathered here, flocking together in this community to find out what's wrong with your work, please give the study a chance, grayscale it, just make it a floating head, do whatever you have to do to not invite yourself to finish it, and add some jewelry and some glowing magic eyes and a wand. Okay, don't finish it. I'm only making fun of myself because I want to add a wand and glowing magic eyes to everything I draw. So don't be like me, okay? Stay away from masterpieces. Stay away from drugs. You're ready for color when you have perfected your edge work, and I've talked about this before. Edge work is really important. If you're still having issues with edges and where to place shadows, and you're having issues with form, you're not ready to confuse yourself with color. When the light is blocked by an object, how does it cast a shadow? I'm working for most and I can't figure it out. I can't answer that just yet. Class is over. If you guys liked what you saw and you want to subscribe, just go to my website. It'll take you to everything. Subscribe on YouTube because you're on YouTube right now. But if you want to join the community, you want to submit your stuff from 14-day challenges to everything else, you have to make sure you submit your 14-day challenges to the 14-day challenge subcategory. Please don't submit it to miscellaneous work for community critique, okay? I hate Google+. I hate everything about this new format. I really hope they change it. They're constantly changing everything. The comment section looks weird. My notifications look weird. They're just constantly working on it, which is good, I guess, but it's a pain in the asshole. If you want your work sent back to you, message me on Facebook. If you want a copy of my brushes for free, and you have some good notes and you are a good note taker, show off your notes in the community. Just make sure you post it to the class notes subcategory. And if I like them, I'll give you a free copy of my brushes. I give around 4 a month away. So if you, 4 or 5, pretty much hitting 3 right now. I've got 2 slots left to give to someone. So if you have some good notes, post them here. It benefits everyone else. Anyone who missed the class can just look at a quick synopsis of the class or something. All the points made. Beautiful note taking. Some people are really, really generous with their notes. So yeah, if you want to go there and get some brushes. What else? Twitter, I make some announcements of class cancellations, and YouTube, yeah, you're on YouTube already. If you're not getting YouTube notifications, it's because your little bell, that little bell in between the subscribe and the viewer and the sub count, is not on. So turn that on so you get notifications on streams and stuff. But yeah, thank you everyone for coming today. Have a great day, guys. Bye-bye.